Right, I'm here for another episode of Thorinquiry, which is my interview series over here on my side channel. And for this episode, my guest is going to be Brah, who, I mean, I'm always reticent to use this sort of cursed terminology in itself, but he is sort of a Twitter figure / personality / obviously the most cursed one's influencer. But you know what? Yes. Actually, let's own it. Let's eat into that, because one thing I've sort of changed my mind on, it's actually quite a kind of pertinent topic right now in general, is, I mean, the obvious political extrusion that people would see this in, it would be the whole thing of like, what should we teach kids at school? I've made that vague enough for everyone to sort of see where I'm going with this. And on that topic, what I think a lot of people are realising is where they've actually messed up in their life was thinking that there was ever like a neutral position or curriculum that we could all agree upon and that no one is offended by or finds weird or disturbing. And that the reality is, like, we're actually all sort of programming each other and reinforcing and shaming each other. And like, essentially, we're all like demanding what we all think and speak and feel about, etc. It's just that a lot of them is essentially a denial of it. So actually, no, we'll lean into it. You are an influencer. You are on some level... the thoughts you have, the ideas you have do influence people in certain ways. So let me start out there, actually. Normally, I'm not a big fan of like self-introductions, etc. But in your particular case, obviously, I don't know anything about the guy before the Twitter account. So my question is just this. Every time I've seen you sort of talk more about sort of, I'd say, everyday life sort of stuff, it sounds like you were a very normal bloke and then you've just sort of backdoored your way through the internet into a lot of this weird info. And it seems like even now, even as much as you go into some of the weird stuff, you seem like you're pretty grounded. You seem to sort of come back to the everyday reality, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, so just a thing about the influencer is like, okay, what does influencer mean? You have influence. And we've been programmed kind of to realize that that's a bad thing, but it's just a bad rap from the influencers who are not doing things in an honest way, or like, you know, oh, this is my flat
trying
stomach
to trick you or something. Yeah,
know?
Exactly. Yes.
So yeah, there is a negativity to it, but if you are doing it for the right reason, you have influence and you are honest and you're genuinely trying to help people and you have influence over other people, like, that's a good thing. You know, if they're going to be bettered because of your influence, that's what everyone should initially or fundamentally be aiming to do to the people around them. If you're a good influence, like, oh, your friends are a bad influence on you, Jimmy, like, don't hang out on them. You have an influence over everyone that you come into contact with. That can be as simple as the people you walk past in your apartment building because you dress nicely and you have an influence on them because they think, oh, wow, that guy looks good. He dresses well. He's shaved. He's groomed. You know, that brightens their day a little bit. Maybe it questions them or inspires them to dress a little bit better or hold their head a little bit higher. So there's multiple different ways. We're all influencers in our own little way. It just so happens that social media allows us to kind of broaden that net and massively amplify the amount of people that we are influencing. So that's how I like to think about it anyway. But in terms of how I got here, yeah, normal dude, you know, normal problems, normal good times as well. I don't have a massive tragedies in my life and all the rest of it. But I was always interested in the human body. I was always interested in, you know, I had a pervasive feeling that I remember feeling when I was younger at these things like school, where like, why are we learning about this? Or that doesn't seem right. I'm going to dive into that a little bit. Then the teacher doesn't give you an adequate explanation. So you just kind of feel scammed in a way with the education that you're getting. I remember feeling that at a young age. So I kind of headed to the internet to find out some extra things. And, you know, when I wanted to put on weight, I would go on you know, the image boards online, which everyone talks about. How did you gain weight? How did you put on muscle? And what did you eat? And, you know, what diet is good for that? And what should you avoid? And so on and so forth. So there's many hours of learning and researching about primarily health-related stuff. And then you realize, okay, so if this is actually what's working, and I've been able to see the ramifications and the results of changing my diet in real time over a few months. And like, oh, wow, I got bigger from doing that. And I got fatter if I ate this, XYZ. You realize that a lot of the stuff that's put out that we're taught in schools or the larger kind of medical associations or the diet advice that we're given is mostly BS a lot of the time.
Sure.
Whether it's because corporations are feeding money into the mouthpieces of doctors or pharmaceutical companies. So it's kind of this cascading rabbit hole of information that I went down to realize. Started with lifting weights and then going down into further things and realizing that there's a lot of BS in the world that we're fed. And thus me learning all about that, because my interest in the human biology enabled me to kind of build this knowledge for myself. And then I eventually stumbled into the world of social media, knowing I would put out content one day, but I was scared and I didn't really do anything other than consume a lot, which I think we all kind of fall into that trap for a lot of years. And then eventually kind of started putting out my own content, just sharing what has helped me and making people aware of things that aren't talked about in the mainstream, and doing it, in a way that was funny or interesting or entertaining. I think is, how I got to where I am today.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely a lot we can go into on the whole angle, like what we started on the whole influence angle there. Because one thing I would actually even say, what I thought we'd do is talk about some of the health stuff. As you say, it's obviously the main area I think most people have found out about you. We'll backdoor our way from there into a lot of the stuff about just life in general, your perspective on things. One thing I would give as an example is this, right? I have a Discord, and it's mainly obviously for esports people. That's the main area I'm in. It's only almost sort of a side thing where I just dip my foot into this other pool where I'm just a bit lucky in the position I'm in life where I could sort of fuck around a bit with that, and I haven't it doesn't really wreck my career. So I'm walking a fine line on that one, but whatever, I'm managing it. Don't worry. I've been doing that in my own career anyway for a long time. I sort of know the tightrope routine, as it were. Exactly. So don't worry. I always tell people, I wouldn't advise you do it because I'm barely getting away with how I'm doing it, and I'm me. So I don't know how you're going to do it. So anyway, everyone should do their own thing. But here's the point I was going to make is on my Discord, a kind of rule I've tried to implement, because we have a channel that's about food and lifestyle, right? And a rule I've implemented, because I actually think this is actually, by the way, this is sort of a microcosm of this entire conversation. It's about finding not only what works, but like systems for how you reliably get to what works. And as you say, how you sift through all the shit. Because we've all read all the same advice a million times online, but we've either never done it, or we're just like paying lip service to it, or we've tried a bit of it and we think it works. And then half the time we're the ones who proselytize to other people who themselves haven't tried it. And it becomes like, I mean, the obvious example in the Twitter sphere is there's books people have never read. They all, like, everyone has an opinion on Marxism, for example, who's never read any of Karl Marx's work. Everyone has an opinion on, could be keto, who's never done a keto. They all have these strong opinions. So basically, the rule I have on my Discord, you'll like it. It goes like this. I tell everyone, because it's not a rule in the sense that you can't violate. It's just like sort of the guideline of how I do things, and I try to lead by example. What I tell people is this: I'm never going to tell you, oh yeah, I heard that is good, or well, I heard try this. All I'm going to tell you is what I've done and what worked for me, and how it worked for me, and what I did. And if we all just stick to that, this is what I want. A key point I want the person listening to take away from this: if we all stick to that, no bullshit can get in the door, because it has to have worked for at least one of us, and in a genuine good faith manner. And even if you then explained how it worked for you and maybe it doesn't work for me, it's like I don't almost have to have like a sinister sort of like skepticism about what you're saying there. Whereas the problem is, obviously, if we all just repeat, I mean, I actually think it's the secret how they've tricked the world, mate. It isn't even just like that they lie. It's that we all repeat, we're all programmed through what we hear in media to just repeat what else we hear in media to everyone else. So the joke is, if you did, say me and you have this conversation, there's a million times when you're going to say something and I could go, yeah, I've heard that script, but I actually haven't looked into it at all. I'm just sort of myself, I'm just a fucking node in the matrix, just repeating what signal came to me. So that's generally, right, the reason I bring that topic up is that's the vibe I get from your Twitter account, actually. I'm sure there's plenty of things there that tons of people try to come at you with, like, that's not scientific, or that's irresponsible, or but here's the thing, I get the vibe, the things you're talking about, things you work for you, they're actually the things that you do, right?
100%. I would never recommend anything I haven't tried. I would never, say, this works if I haven't done it. And that, if when you stick to those rules, that means you can be resolute and stay and say, like, hey, no, I did this works, or this doesn't work. Or for me, I always try and like make the caveat of, if someone asks me a question about XYZ supplement, I'll be like, I've heard that it does this, haven't tried it myself. Do your own research. Or as always, do your own research. Things that work for me may not work for you. But what this enables you to do is, if you try something that sounds ridiculous to, the mainstream receiver of the information, like, you got to sun your balls, for example, is the big one that I talk about. Yes. And they think, oh, what could that possibly do? It's like this, just, the NPC mode kind of kicks in. But if you stop and think about it, I've tried it. I've experienced, a boost of energy. It just feels intuitively good. And testosterone in general, I would like to think mine's pretty high relatively to the average male. I know that for a fact. So there are these things that I do that feel good, make me perform better. And even if they seem ridiculous, I can stand by them and say, no, I do this and it works well for me. You know, raw liver, raw milk, these are the ones that, they're fairly mainstream in terms of the things that I talk about, but not everyone's heard about it. But the mainstream narrative is like, you got to cook all your food, pasteurizing to kill all the bad bacteria, when in fact, we had raw foods, raw milk especially, for hundreds of years, if not thousands, before the current prevailing food system and food brainwashing, if you will, has kind of taken over that. And so you got to take it back to first principles. I always say, like, what's natural is good. The closer you can be to the earth, and without all these technology influences and chemicals and all these other things which we've kind of brought in over the last 50 years or so, 50 to 100 years, really, the better. The closer you are to our natural state, it's like, that's normal. What's abnormal is all the other stuff that's going into our bodies and contributing to chronic diseases, overloading our bodies with toxins and things that are causing cancers, and also living in a lifestyle where most people are getting up, they're not exercising, they're having fake foods, they're sitting in their car, they're driving to work, they then sit in an office chair in the same posture all day. They go home, they sit on a couch and they watch TV. There's all these fake lights, they're never getting outside. And then those people, you're living so far away to what the general human was, outdoors, working in the fields, walking around, interacting with their fellow neighbor all the time, that of course is going to be dysfunction. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, yeah, well, no shit, everyone's unhealthy. And so while it may be triggering to some people, it's fairly logical to me to be like, well, okay, we're not doing anything right because what we're doing is so antithetical to human existence, really, on every level. And yeah, you just got to break out of that kind of programming, and then you realize you go down the rabbit hole. If one thing works, you go, oh, well, what else have I been lied to about, and so on and so forth.
Sure. I mean, there's obviously a lot that I can jump in on. I think one angle I would actually be interested in hearing your thoughts on is, as you say, there's sort of, like, a lot of your material, I would say, is about fixing your environment, essentially. Like, literally the environment you live in each day. Like you say, almost everyone's under artificial lights, but they don't have any clue what effect does artificial light have on the human body. They haven't looked into it. Everyone, I mean, I know they hate this one because, again, it's like the sun and the balls one. They hear it and the NPC goes mental. Yeah. The idea that different frequencies are going through your body. Yeah. Everyone just goes, must be fine. Otherwise, the government would tell me or something, or I could sue someone. So, again, they all just think that must be fine. That Wi-Fi signal, they take their phone, everything, obviously other things are all going through them. Then you go into the realm of food and other things, what your health regime is. Like, the main problem I've noticed with this whole area is, essentially, here's the way I would make it fun. If you wanted to, like, think of it in a different sense, so that someone, because essentially here's the problem. They don't think there's anything wrong with their environment. In fact, the joke is they always think when they're ill. That's why actually contagion is the ultimate fucking metaphor for them. They always think it's some external force must have invaded their perfect, serene, clean home that everything's awesome in. And that, essentially they lived in the utopia, the perfect ecosystem, and it's been disrupted by this. Hence, what do? You go outside of your environment, you take the medicine that the person tells you, that gets rid of the thing, and then we all know, like, in their world, you fix the problem. But as far as I can tell, and this is an interesting area for me, because I don't know if you find this, whenever I actually, like, discover a new area and there's something to it, I quickly find, actually, like, that sort of connects to every area I was into. So without making the really obvious illusion that people might understand over the last few years, I get the vibe that sort of the environment or the terrain you're in is actually massively impactful on all areas of life and health. Actually, it turns out, like, you sort of pull on that little thread and the whole thing comes unraveled. Every area of health seems to be affected by this. Like, for example, the joke is, I spent so many years of my life as a fucking weird hobby on the side looking into conspiracy stuff. And what's mad is, mate, I actually found the principle they did in the conspiracy world. Not only have they done in all areas of normal life, and it goes like this. They create the problem first, pretend it always had to exist, then sell you the bullshit solution, which causes another problem, which then it's like a cycle that just keeps going, and they can then give you any things they want you to consume, take money from you in any way, control you in it. Like, there's a million angles. It seems like even in the world of health and just living your life, that principle exists, because the same principle, like, no one stops and thinks, is it unhealthy to be under a fluorescent light, right? Is it unhealthy to eat this food? I mean, it's past all these federal threshold, so it must be fine, right? What do you think on this whole topic? Because it feels like life itself sort of fake in a way.
Yeah, so that's really at the heart of everything is the pharmaceutical complex, which needs sick people to continue treating, to which they get money, and it doesn't solve a problem. If they made people healthy, that's not a good business model. And that's as simple as that. Like, if they can keep people sick, they can keep people coming back for treatment, for medications, then, you know, they have a repeat customer. They have a lifelong customer until that person gets so sick that they die. And then it's like, oh, our treatment couldn't save him. Oh, well. And then you can go into things, the injections that, you know, people are given directly at birth, multiple injections of heavy metals and all the rest of it. That is pretty much the start. We're assaulted from birth. Not to mention circumcision, you know, a barbaric practice that is kind of just accepted by everyone, at least in the Western world. It's like, no, that's general mutilation of a literal baby. There's no medical need for it. It's completely, you know, horrific at every level. So, like, you come out the womb, boom, you're being attacked on all levels, chemically, you know, literally, physically. You're born in a hospital, which is blue light. So the very first light information that you're getting as a child is, you know, this weird, super intense blue light, fluorescence, probably flickering. And it's just like, oh my God, what is happening? And this is, you're 30 seconds out of your mum at this point.
Yeah.
So everything is kind of downstream from there. And then, like, you know, we have rising autism rates. We have, you know, chronic disease rates, obese kids. All of this points to the environment that we're being placed in since birth, coerced into at every level is bad for us. You know, you can't have a healthy organism inside a bad environment. We know this intuitively with, like, oh yeah, you got to clean the water of the fish tank, otherwise the fish will get sick.
Sure.
But then people will walk around the city inhaling fumes and being buzzed by mobile phone towers at the top of their apartment building and be like, I'm all good. I'm going to take this vitamin supplement and it's all going to be fine. That's impossible. You can't take any supplement to, you know, cover over the deficits that occur from living in an environment that is unhealthy. And so a lot of the reason why I say, you know, get back to nature is because the natural environment that we're meant to exist in, getting good sunlight, fresh air, bathing in natural sources of water, and food that hasn't been genetically modified or super processed or put in plastic, and drinking water that's in plastic, and, you know, fake sweeteners, artificial flavorings, all of these things, which are just like very, very new to the body, but also just like made in a lab, which means your body doesn't know what to do with them. So your body's in a constant state of stress at all times. Most people are working in an office, which is, you know, artificial light, which is then also recycled air. Maybe they put air fresheners as well. This is a big one. It's like, yeah, let's freshen the air with this chemical smell that's just going to, like, literally have to be processed by your liver because it's poisonous to you on a lot of levels. Maybe it has endocrine disruptors. You know, you're stressed, so you take, you know, nicotine or anything else just to get through the day. Adderall if you're at a high stress functioning job. And, you know, there's so many things that kind of coalesce into each other to break down your health. And if you're sick, then you're a good customer for the pharmaceutical complex. So that's really the first part of taking back your sovereignty as a human individual. And if there's a healthy population is going to have a normal emotional reaction to someone that's trying to rule over them. So if everyone's sick, if everyone's scared, if everyone's, you know, being told what to do and keeping their bodies in a very low vibration state, then they're much more likely to accept someone saying, okay, stay inside, you know, give us your money. Yes. You're going to be taxed even higher. No, you can't work anymore. And if you're ill and you're sick and you don't have energy, then that's, you know, much easier to do at a populational level. So there's so many things that come back to just taking care of your own health. And that's why it's like, it's not a selfish thing to take care of your own health and dedicate time and remove yourselves from these toxic environments no matter what, because when you are in a better position to have a healthy body, then you have, you know, again, a better influencer on the people around you. You're emotionally stable. You're actually going to get pissed off if your government official does something ridiculous and have the energy and wits about you to do something about it. So it's about keeping a population docile. You know, there are so many threads to this. There's, you know, alcohol. Most people, don't use alcohol in the right way, or if you do it all, it's still, bringing you down on some level. If you're watching porn, that's another way that they control you. The popular music, if you go back to frequencies, you're blasting that into your head, hours and hours a day. They are literally created to keep you at a lower vibration in terms of, how you feel, which affects your health as well. The lyrics of those songs, maybe they're depressing, or maybe they're just bad programming in general, and they're drowning out your own internal dialogue, which is saying, this sucks. Like, what are you doing, bro? Like, why are we working in this job? Which most people have. I would say that the vast, vast majority of people are unhappy in their workspaces right now, but they either use substances, other distractions, the weekend, and alcohol to take over that little voice in their head, which is their true self, their true intuition, being like, bro, you need to fix something, your body's breaking down. But most people just push it away because either it's scary to think about, it's on some levels it makes people feel stupid because they've been hoodwinked, so it's easier for them to deny it and say no, like, this is actually the right thing, and I've been doing the right thing my whole life. Because after 30 years, 40 years, if you have to accept that you've been lied to, then you can feel silly. And on some levels, like, yeah, okay, but it's better to tomorrow realize you've been hoodwinked. Okay, guys, you got me. Like, nice one, but this isn't working for me. I don't feel happy. I don't feel strong. I don't feel whatever it is. And realize that, there are people that profit off you being weak, stupid, and sick. And that's what it comes down to. And my part of the movement or information that I want to put out is just telling people this and showing how to take back that health sovereignty, so that we have a population that is healthy for the most part, and then everyone is just going to benefit from that.
On the lines earlier, when you said, like, when you say something, obviously people should do their own research. I thought that's an interesting angle in itself, because I notice even some of the people, when they're replying to your tweets, or if I even try to throw out some sort of like abstract life advice, there's a type of person that immediately just jumps in there, and they're the one that's always like, context? What's he talking about? And it's like that. I always say, like, that guy doesn't get it. And in fact, you're actually doing that guy a disservice if you help him, because what he doesn't get is he still thinks he's a passive consumer and that you're going to serve him, in this particular case, a la carte, exactly what he wants. So, tell me these things here, and then tell me what to do next. It's like, I'll give you the quick example. It's like a bigger life version of it. I've noticed a trend where people will say something's negative, but then they won't like complete the thought. Like, they won't finish like, but here's the other side of it. And so I'll give you an example. Like, the best example would be like a very classic thing someone might say that's trendy now goes like this. Like, think about the red pill sphere. Like, don't get married, you idiot. What if she bloody divorces you and takes all your money in court and shreks you completely? It's like, here's the part they don't complete. What's the alternative, mate? Like, is the alternative just be alone and be a fucking genius wizard in a fucking barrel like Diogenes and just have all the sickest thoughts ever, but have no meaningful relationship with women? Spoiler, you're probably not going to be able to recreate all of fucking culture. So I imagine most women you'd want to have a long-term relationship with probably going to want to get married, right? The point in that scenario is, like, I sort of have the different vibe. I'm like, if anything, shouldn't it be more like, understand those problems going in, but if I'm going to do it, I'm obviously trying to be the one that succeeds. I'm not trying to be the 60% that fail. I'm trying to be obviously in the 20-30% at the top, succeed, get all the positives. So, same scenario, I would say this. When people say, like, oh, so now I have to, like, look into this. Well, how can I trust that? Why don't I just trust the doctor? It's like, mate, what's the alternative? Like, if you look into this, you'll find out, like you're saying, they are massively lying to you from birth, and to the extent that most of the ones lying to you aren't intentionally lying. They themselves are repeating lies they don't know are lies, or are mistruths, or intentionally, like, it means one thing, but you think the word means another, as you'll find with a lot of legal terms, for example. And if you're looking at that world, like, realistically, you have to do your own research anyway, mate. And actually, if you're the sort of person who isn't, like, you don't follow me and you. Don't reach out to us. Like, it ain't for you, mate. Maybe you need to be led by someone. But to me, like I say, what's the alternative? At this point, you have to take responsibility for all this shit. Even if it sounds mad, like, wait, so I have to take responsibility for all the light that comes into our body, all the products that come. Yes. Really. I know it sounds fucked up, but really, like, this is how you escape the Matrix.
Yeah. It's taking responsibility for every level, which is, one, scary, two, massively empowering. And that's what I speak about, is no one can lift the weights for you. No one is going to, like, help you out. It's just being an adult. And a part of the problem is everyone's kind of, the government is the perpetual parent for many people. And that's obviously by design. If the government has, propaganda-wise told you this is what is safe, this is what is good, and you've never really considered otherwise, then yeah, you're going to respond to that like an obedient drone. But people were taking care of themselves, growing their own food, making their own living, and distrusting the people that ruled over them for most of human history. And it's not a new thing, but there are always going to be ruling powers, whether it was a king back in the day who only wanted to get rich and so was expending the peasantry, in his own foreign battles or whatever. That's still going on today in a literal sense, but also in the fact that the government is, squeezing money out of you through taxation, not really representing you in the best interest, and then also implementing laws and stuff which reduce your chances of being able to survive just as a human. So it's about being responsible. But a note on the divorce thing, it's fear-based mentality. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's living in fear and acting in fear and thinking about the worst case scenario in any situation. They think, no, I'm not going to start a business because most businesses fail.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, but like, are you most people? No, hopefully you just don't want to go into it with that defeatist mindset. And if you do, then you're just going to end up, having a mediocre life, poor health, and, poor relationships because you've shot yourself in the foot and you don't even get in the race before you've even started. So avoid that.
For sure. Right, let's go into some specifics then. So one thing people might know you for, I would say actually, is obviously just the product you sell. You actually sell some supplements, like you sell the glycine, for example. You can use glycine or magnesium glycinate. Essentially, once people look into this topic, it's a very simple topic. It just depends what you want it to be bonded with and how you want to take it into your body. So if you don't use a magnesium supplement already, maybe use magnesium glycinate. But either way, he sells one that's like this, right? This is a good starting point because to me, the other thing that's really interesting about all these topics, I mean, it's going to sound so full on because what we're trying to make the point of here is sort of the genius of the system is it isn't just like that they have to make you go to a war to kill you. They don't have to make you go to this place and do this one thing. It's full spectrum, and they already got into all of our lives and our homes decades ago. And the joke is like people just don't even know that the battle takes place every time you go to eat a piece of food. You turn on a light, you don't open a window. Like that is the world. So in terms of the supplement angle, the idea that there are certain things that we do not currently take in, right? One angle I know that is, I think it's one of the most enlightening is when you tell people essentially about the fact that like the modern way of producing like essentially factory farming and mass production of agriculture mixed with all the fertilizers and stuff they use. Basically, the problem is the apple you eat isn't the apple that your great-great-granddad ate after he did a day's work in the farm. I know it looks like it in your brain, but first of all, it wouldn't even look like it back then. And the actual amount of nutrients obviously is fuck all. So essentially what we're sort of getting to here, right, is the idea that like even what you'd love to tell people, like just eat healthy food, that in itself isn't alone actually going to probably get it done if you live in a big city right now. Like I often tell people, the problem with this topic goes like this. One, this will sound mad, but spoiler, all these topics are intended to sound mad. That is the first step of how they get you not to look into it. Yeah. I describe it as the electric fence mechanism. As soon as you touch the electric fence, you get the shock. In this case, it's usually that you look silly and people shame you, and that just makes you stop looking into it. So what makes it look silly when you bring up the supplement angle, right, is people are going to say what you just said. They're going to go, what do you mean? I've taken my multivitamin. That's the genius of the system, dude. Like if I think, like step one, I want to take some supplements. First thing I'm going to do in the West is I'm going to go into one of those really famous high street shops that sells vitamins and supplements, right? And I'm going to go in there, and because when you were a kid, your mum told you take the multivitamin, you're going to go buy that one thing, and that's it. It's a modern day consumer mentality as well. It's like the fucking shit with all the shampoo in it. Instead of just like getting 10 of them, I'm going to get the one that does it all. Well, spoiler, just like the shampoo, that is going to be the shittest one possible, and even worse. Here's the real scam. I think that's a psyop, dude, because have you noticed, if you ever look into what they say the correct amounts are on those multivitamins, they're almost intended to make some of them do fucking nothing. Some of them, they almost intentionally seem to give you the worst bioavailable version of that. Like I say, depending on what version of a magnesium you get. When you stack all these things together, it's like they almost know like what your first step would be, and they've already counteracted that. Like that'll do fuck all for you. So even though this sounds again like, wow, it's getting bloody complicated, how many things I have to take, listen, the more time you put into this topic, right, it bears dividends, right? It isn't one you just want to skimp on.
Yeah, exactly. And even with things like the issue,
but it sounds like you did a lot of trial and error in this area, right?
Yeah, of course. I have taken a multivitamin in the past. I've taken, even something as simple as vitamin C. You might think, oh, I've got a good vitamin C in the cupboard and it's just vitamin C and what it's contained in is, it's fine for me to have. But vitamin C that they sell you most of the time is only the outer shell of the vitamin C molecule. It's called ascorbic acid. Now, they can market that as vitamin C, but you're not getting the whole complex of vitamin C that's in something like an orange. And so it's like this fake version of vitamin C. So like my first point of contact is always like, no matter where you are, find the best quality food that you can. Eat similarly to how I eat on Instagram. There's heaps of food there. If you follow that, you're going to go pretty well. But farmers markets are good. Most of them deliver to most, major cities. If you don't just go to a farmer's market, they usually meet on the weekends somewhere in your local area. That is going to be your first point of contact. Find organic by the highest quality that you can. When I first started, I couldn't eat the way that I eat now that I have, more income or whatever. So when I was a student, it was like, okay, big bag of white rice, cans of the best tuna that I could, and then fresh produce. And, I'll buy bulk steaks or bulk ground beef. That's cheap. Liver, one of the most bioavailable or the most bioavailable nutritious foods on the market, is very cheap because not many people eat it. It's like, at least in modern world, it's not very palatable to most people. But that is like best bang for your buck. Everyone can afford that on some level in some way. So no matter what your situation is, you can do better. And that's like, don't get upset because you can't eat exactly like me and get the best quality food that you can and the best vitamins and best supplements, whatever. You can still by far live a healthy life and have a healthy body through eating the food that we have available. Now, is it going to be the most nutritious compared to our great grandparents? Probably not. But we can get there and you can do a lot better than you can, and you can eat in a way that you're still going to be performing, 10 times better than the people that are still plugged into that matrix of bad food. And then from there, because you'll have more energy, more performance at a level in your body, then you can dedicate more time to researching, okay, what is the best vitamins with that? All of the information is out there, despite their efforts to censor things and mislead you and whatever. If you go into it with an open mind, and there are lots of very, very smart nutritionists on the internet that will say different things and have different opinions, but then you go into, okay, what are the common threads? What do people seem to agree on? Animal foods are probably more nutritious than eating greens. So, stop buying the lettuces, stop buying kale and things, and buy some liver, buy some high quality eggs and have them raw. You're going a great deal further than anyone else just kind of shopping in the supermarket. But even if you do have to shop in the supermarket, or even if you still living at home and you've got to save up your pocket change to get some extra food for, it's all possible. And you can, as always, you don't want to get in the fear mindset, oh, it's too hard, like they're brainwashing me on every level, like I'm just going to give up and order Uber Eats. Like, no, that in itself is just like a failure, because it's like this, I tweeted this today, the truth will first upset you, but it will ultimately set you free. And there's going to be a period where things are scary or things are going to upset you because you're like, oh fuck, this is just awful, what's happening to me, what have I been eating, what have I been staring into a blue light every night before bed for years? And it's like, okay, but the past is the past, tomorrow is a new day, and you can always have the opportunity to make better choices tomorrow. It just requires you to let go of the biases and let go of your ego and just say, okay, I'm a humble student. I'm just going to take in information. I'm going to learn from people that look healthy and are performing well. And, they have the results to back up what they're talking about. That's another thing, which is someone bigger than me in terms of muscle is like, okay, this training is good for this. And I'm like, okay, probably knows what he's talking about on some level. I can at least, try out what he's saying. And if someone is a nutritionist, but they're skinny and their skin looks ill and like they're saying vegan this, vegan that, it's like, okay, probably am not going to take your advice on something. And so there's ways of doing it, and ultimately it's always about taking responsibility, having an open mind, experimenting, and then over the years your only chance is to get better.
One thing you touched on there, which is another kind of like philosophical point, I think that we're almost in similar alignment on in life in general, beyond even just this health topic, is the idea that there is like an intuitive aspect to things that are true or that work, that are effective. As in, you don't need to know every aspect of the mechanism or you don't actually have to have the way people would think of like something being certified now. Like, as you're saying, if somebody says, I do this routine, and it's like literally a workout routine, a health routine, and then you can see from the photos, literally what they look like, maybe they even, some of them, I mean, that's actually a popular thing if people don't know with coaching people, sometimes they'll even post like their blood work and show that like, you know, they have all the fucking levels where they're meant to be. That person at that point in time, like, you don't need that guy to convince you with a bloody lecture. It's the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? So to me, there's like an element of that where this actually, I find it applies to everything in life, mate. Like, on some level, like, things are a lot more simpler than we think. A lot of the things that people second guess themselves about, that's the nonsense. That's the programming coming in there and sort of interrupting your own mind, finding what it seems is to know is intuitively true. Like, when you're talking about this topic of, like, by the way, it's a key one to hit on, people are going to see the spectrum of things that they have to change if they want to make things perfect. And they're going to do what you said. They're going to go, I haven't got bloody time for this. It's too much effort. I don't know it all. I don't know what to do. Like, mate, that isn't you. That isn't you talking. That's you at your wit's end. That's you with no energy. That's you with shit food. That's you in the worst possible environment that hasn't worked out. That hasn't got a single bloody vitamin going around his brain. That's you at your lowest talking. And so in the same way as you wouldn't want someone to take, like think about how depressed you are when you're hungover or something. You wouldn't want someone to take everything you said then as like, that's who you are as a person.
Yeah.
But people don't know that they're in this depleted state. So the sad thing about these topics is, don't worry about being a master. Just become a beginner, like he says here. Start out, and the few initial things that make sense and stick, that's your initial homework. Don't worry about the stuff that you don't understand. Like all the shit I said earlier about like magnesium gland. Don't worry about that. All you need to know right now is, this powder make me go to sleep a bit better. There you go. Exactly. Problem solved. If that works for you, you've nailed it. You can worry about how it works later. So what I would say is that, like, don't worry about that angle. And then secondly, when you actually, it's only later you're going to realize how full spectrum it was. When you remove these negative influences, when you actually turn those things into boons to your health, or you remove something that was draining your energy, I would say it's like the very simple premise of going to the gym if you've never gone to the gym. You think to yourself, I'm too tired to go to the gym. That's because you don't ever go to the gym. You have got no stamina, mate. Your muscles are fucking nothing. You know, in the East, they figured all this shit out philosophically years ago. Like, I remember I heard someone once say, like, you might have heard this one. If you're someone who hasn't got time to meditate for an hour a day, you need to meditate 2 hours a day. If you can understand that principle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, I would say that angle, like, these people don't get it, dude. Once they're even a week or two into even one of these topics, they're going to start to see at least a tiny level up. And man, they don't know how that stacks. Because you know the other principle, this principle goes into the finance world. You know, none of us plebs, because we've been taught to be the working breeding class, none of us understand the concept of compound interest. So we don't know that actually gaining even like 0.1% every day ends up being enormous if you do it for a whole year. It's actually insane. So we don't get that. Like, you don't, like you were saying, don't think you're going to go from 0% to 10% good on this in a week. You're not. But even a 0.1%, it will have results 6 months down the line. So you start stacking little wins, man, you can go somewhere fast on this.
100%. And that goes to all areas of your life. And the consistency is the main thing. Like, I've seen this a lot, you know, even amongst my own friendship group. When I was lifting, 6 years ago, I take my friends and with me, showing them the ropes and dragging them to the gym and whatever, they made some progress and they're happy and they're fitting into their t-shirts better and they're like, wow, this is awesome. But something will happen. Maybe they get too overwhelmed or they think they don't have enough time or they just get lazy or whatever and they drop off. And then 6 months later, they're like, I should get back in the gym. Even if those people had gone to the gym twice a week for 30 minutes and they just had selected 5 of the machines. You don't even have to worry about free weights if you're at this level. 5 of the machines, you do your bicep curls until you can't do any more. Then you go and do your leg press until you can't do any more. And that is like the simplest version of things. But because they consistently went for 6 months, then 6 months later, they are at an exponentially higher level of progress and success than if they'd gone super, super hard or like 5-6 days a week, which one is just not optimal for muscle building in general. But it can overwhelm you if you are drawing from that initial base, which is like relatively low. So consistency in all things, and like don't get overwhelmed because you don't have every single supplement. But if you just take your magnesium, your glycine, and make sure you're eating liver, and eggs, then yeah, you're pretty good. But just keep at it and continue doing it, because that is the main thing. It's the same with content creation online. You will get better no matter what, as long as you keep trying and you keep putting out things online or whatever. Like, I have friends who have also started, their own Instagram for fitness or whatever, and the people that are just stick around, they stay in the game, they keep playing and they keep posting, and like they get better, and maybe they get laughed at, but they make progress, but then they'll stop. And when you stop entirely, no matter what, if you keep on doing things, you're going to make progress. But if you stop, then yeah, you're going to regress. And that's just at the heart of everything.
One of the reasons why I also get why part of this is an issue for people is they almost have to battle their own internal dialogue, because unfortunately, like, first of all, they've got all the nonsense signal noise society's put in their brain, and then they've got all the guilt shame complex of like, I'm a piece of shit 'cause I can't do this, and somehow for some reason for some people maybe it's even worse when they know that they should do something but then they don't. Because the one that always kills me, I want to get your take on this, is obviously a thing you're famous for. When you sell the glycine, which people use to hopefully induce sleep, I find it works very well. It definitely gives me a better chance to sort of get the first part of getting off to sleep. Right. Yep. One thing I'll say is this. That is probably the general advice about sleep, which is about, don't have caffeine past 3 p.m, try not to have your meal past 8 p.m, take 2 hours off screens, read a book that's fiction for an hour before. Everyone's heard it. Everyone's retweeted those bloody tweets. They're some of the most popular sort of generic tweets in all of, I'd say, like, not even just the manosphere, just all of Twitter in general. But have you noticed, almost everyone agrees we should do those things, but most people, they don't do any of those things. Have you noticed that? People can actually feel run down, shitty. They know they should do all these things, but something in their brain, they can't even begin the process, if you know what I mean. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think so I have a few coaching clients that I'll go through like pretty consistently what they should be doing in terms of eating and sleeping, and how they should think and all the rest of it. Maybe we'll have a week off in terms of actually speaking face to face, and then 2 weeks later we'll speak again, and it's like, oh yeah, I know I should have been doing the breath work. I should have been just like 10 minutes of gratitude, or my bedtime routine, but they just let it slip. And I don't know whether it's some people will really, there seems to be a buffer period where you have to override that voice in your head to commit it to a habit. Otherwise, it's a lot harder to complete. And if you're young and listening to this, then your brain is more malleable and it has more capacity to commit these things to habit. And so I think the earlier you begin these things, the better. I was lucky, 14, 15 when I first started going to the gym. So it's kind of like a punishment if I don't go to the gym, rather than, it being pain and punishment to go to the gym, which is the perspective that a lot of people have about it. So that kind of leads me to the point of reframing all of these things. Like you think that you're going out of your way and like it's a grind to eat healthy, like you just want to relax and, order Uber Eats or just, eat poor foods, packaged foods. But when you reframe it as you get to do these things, you get to make the progress in your life that's going to make you have a healthier body, a healthier mind, and be more successful. You have the capacity to really just have some perspective with it, because some people in the world literally have to, the only job that they can do in their area, 14 hours in a coal mine and, backbreaking labor and really just grinding it out, inhaling these horrible coal fumes and all the rest of it. And they come out with soot all over their faces. Like, that's some people's existence. If we have to, in our very, very blessed, privilege is a bit of a dirty word, and it's like whatever, but in a lot of ways we are very privileged to be where we are, where we have the access to the internet, where we still, despite all the quote unquote problems in the world, we still have a supermarket that has food in it that we can go and it's literally just the choice of picking up the good food instead of the bad food from the supermarket, and it's all prepared for you. You don't have to slaughter animals in order to get your animal food. You don't have to gather eggs and stuff. It's like, man, that's easy. It's so easy. And people have just forgot what life can be like. And people are not appreciative of where we can be. And it's like, oh man, but I have to give up my phone before bed. It's like, to me on some levels, it's so pathetic. And that's the kind of, it's not good motivation as such, because you don't want to like make yourself feel bad for not being able to do it. But on some levels, it's just like, man, appreciate how actually easy it is, despite all the BS propaganda forces that are, want us to make the wrong choices. Ultimately, it's still your choice at every level. And yes, with all of the, the medical contraptions that they've tried to force on us, that is still ultimately your choice. You can give in to the propaganda and the fear and everything, but, there are people like us who have just said no, and we're still around. And it literally is like, I forget the exact quote, but I think it's Julius Caesar was talking about slaves, and he was saying that we don't want the slaves to think like us, because otherwise they won't want to be slaves anymore.
Yes.
And it really is poignant, because everyone is choosing their own demise at the end of the day. Again, that can become like pretty harsh for some people to realize, oh, actually it's been me that's been going to the supermarket and getting these trash foods, and it's been me staying up and not sleeping well and all the rest of it. It's like, yeah, no one's forcing you to do it. There are people that would like you to do that and want you to go and, book the hospital visits, which lead to you taking medication. But who's the one putting the medication in your mouth and all the rest of it? It's still you. And at scale, there's this society level psychosis, which has just made that the normal thing, but it's normalized. It's not normal. So there's things that, again, come back down to personal responsibility, realizing that you're in control of this human meat suit on a lot of levels, all levels. And, it's up to you whether you want to make the right choices and really take advantage of what we have still available to us today, which is a lot. And it's infinitely easier, because back in the day, you didn't even have the internet to have these kind of conversations, or Google what is good for building muscle, for example.
Sure. I mean, one thing you're tying into there, what I actually do also I'm very much in agreement of, which is I notice it's something I've noticed is different about your content from a lot of people in the same space. Like, you seem to have a similar vibe I do, which is it never becomes black pill. Like, it never becomes, right, I found these things out, so we're all fucked and everyone's evil, so we're dead. It's like, if anything, every time I find out something is fucked up, like you say, it's like uplifting. Now I've cleared the fucking cobwebs out. Now I can look what's actually there, and then I just start going, right, first of all, who are the cool people around this information? Who are the ones who are just fucking full of shit? Who are the people who seem like they're doing something in their life? And I find, just as long as I can find a small way I can carve out in my own life that I can start doing something, that's enough. It's like you say, you don't have to make the transformation overnight. Because I would say on this topic, it sounds crazy, but it's one area I've noticed among conspiracy people I also vibe similarly. The ones who go down the angle of, like, essentially, like, unless we sort of do, I mean, sadly in the modern day, they'd probably say unless you do like an armed uprising or something, we're all going to essentially be in like a concentration camp and we're going to get killed by the evil fucks. Like, I don't actually buy that at all, mate. It's like you say, the genius of the current system, as far as I can tell, is that they, like, essentially the 20th century, they were advertising two programs. They could either go 1984 style, which is that you just get put in a camp and they sort of kill you slowly, or the other angle was the Brave New World angle, which is like, we'll sort of make it so you opt into all these things. You choose to take the pill that sort of dumbs you down because you think it sort of is nice, or you choose to just go and fill your head with mindless entertainment that doesn't have any sort of purpose for your soul, just to waste an hour. The genius of the current system is, it's not like you have no choice, I've got a gun on your back. It's like, actually, we're so good at marketing and programming people's minds, we can convince the majority of the people we need to do all these things to themselves, to opt into putting this into their body, to rub this onto their skin, to put this light into their eyes, to have this tower near their brain that affects it. We get them to choose it all, and at the end, and this is the key point, and you've kind of touched on it there, so I want to bring it up. The key point at the end is, this is where the level one conspiracy people clearly are either naive or full of shit, because they turn around and they go, look what they did to, they didn't do anything to you, mate. Now, certainly I will say, I wouldn't, in an ideal world, if I was designing it, I wouldn't have my children, for example, have a device in their pocket where they can just communicate with some sinister piece of shit who is trying to convince them to fuck their own life over. Yeah, obviously I'd build a different sort of high trust, small society. But in the world we're already in, you have to acknowledge, like, we are choosing it all. Essentially, it's like the analogy I always give is when we all go on the internet, and nowadays the genius now is you have less excuse now for complaining about people taking your data. They made it so annoying now. You have to agree every time you go on the website in Europe that you get your bloody data. So how after that am I going to turn around and go, you're not going to believe this, Saul, brother? They were fucking scanning me the whole time. I clicked I accept 1 million times in a row. Like I didn't read that document. I don't know. I'm sure the legalese says I'm giving it all away and I can't do shit about it. Like essentially, this is like a key point though. If you don't accept like the personal self-responsibility for all of this, that's like building block one of getting out of this for me.
Yeah, it's funny when you really say it like that. Like, we are building our own demise on every level, and it's just a unfortunate consequence of the world we've born into. But again, you don't want to black pill about this stuff because the propaganda that they put out is intended to make you feel black pill. Because when you're black pilled, you don't even try, and the war's over before it's even begun. This is the point of Genghis Khan. He used to send spies to cities before he even attempted to conquer them, and he used to spread the word of Genghis Khan's army is so fearful. There's no other army that can beat them. And what'll happen is the armies of that city would be so scared that when Genghis Khan came rolling over the hill with his crew, they would just oh god, we'll throw down our swords and let him take it. And then he'll just stroll in and cool, there you go. So the information warfare has begun months and months before the actual physical warfare was kind of in play. And that is the exact same thing that's happening today. If you're shown the bad things in society over and over again and getting into the trap of social media, at this point, like even amongst my friends on social media, if you are magnifying the enemy's propaganda with your takes on it, then I'm just going to mute you or unfollow you. Like, I don't need that in my reality. If everyone kind of ignored it, like, yes, there are things that are happening that are bad and need to be talked about. But if you're just like obsessively negatively opining over this BS video of some overweight liberal like talking about some god awful thing, it's like, who are you helping there? Like, you're just amplifying the enemy's message. You should be amplifying your team's message and saying, okay, what are we going to build instead? What are we going to do instead? What are we going to do about this problem in a positive way? And again, what is the influence that you are bringing to yourself, your own community, and the people around you? Are you going to be a positive influence, or are you going to be a negative Nancy influence and contribute to the fear porn and, essentially lowering the energetic level of the people that you said you're going to support, or, the causes that you want to support? It's like, you're not helping anyone doing that. And that's just one of the things that I take issue with in terms of, like, if you're listening and you follow people that are like, look at what the left is doing or whatever, then just like ignore that, unfollow. It doesn't, what really makes a difference in terms of you being able to turn the tide of this bullshit, increasing your own status, increasing your power, increase the money you have, increase the community relations and strength of relationships that you have, and your own ability to magnify good messages and all the rest of it. Like the little takes of like being upset about things, like that literally helps no one. So if you genuinely say like, this is bad, I do not want this, then the only real way to affect change is to, take control of your own life, be more successful, and then you're in a better position that when that shit pops up in your life, you squash it like a bug.
Sure. Oh, by the way, another angle that I think is fascinating to me is where, like I say, when you notice that sort of things that seem disconnected actually are almost essentially connected. So I'll give you an example. Obviously, one of the main debates in the sort of food and nutrition part of Twitter, for example, is always this whole thing of like, people who like eating meat or people who sometimes go as far as carnivore type keto diets, etc., which is my sort of realm. And then the people who are obviously on the pure veganism tape and that whole angle. What's fascinating is I noticed that dude actually even ties into what the bigger issue is, which is essentially this. You'll notice that in the modern day, this is how clever they are with the bloody programming. Like, by the way, you notice I'm not one of these people who thinks like, because I think this is also level fucking 1 and 2 of like the conspiracy world of like, oh, good news though, they're all just morons who don't know, and they're failing every way. It's like, mate, I look around and I see the evil people in the world succeeding all the time, and they're so genius. They can make it look like they lost while they succeed and get their way, and they can get me, you, and everyone in our circle to go, the bloody idiot doesn't know what he's doing, does he? I can't believe he bloody tripped over, and him and all his backers have made millions. Bloody incompetent. I always just want to go like, mate, when do we ever fuck up and get millions? Like, we fuck up, our whole life's over, our job's over, we're idiots, like, we're out, you know. So one thing I would say is this, right, is when you talk about the topic of like the meat eater thing, the fascinating part about that is they've even psyoped the bloody vegans into eating processed food. So the joke is we can't even actually have the discussion of like, should humans eat vegetables or not? Because even the bloody vegan idiots eating the fake sausage that's processed and is terrible in that sense. So one of the things I find fascinating is when you get to the base root, me and you are men, so we can't speak for Win on this one. In the world of men, the reason why that topic is actually essential has nothing to do with your politics around the rights of animals or what you think. Here's the real angle that you have to get to, and this is actually, I think, a massive area, and I know it's a big one for you, which is, as a man, you should care about your testosterone levels. If you don't, spoiler, you're in bad shape already, and that implies you really need to look into it. Like, the fact that you don't think it's a big deal, or if you even have any notions in your mind, like, that sounds like some toxic masculinity, you are already so far gone, brother. You need, like, the emergency version of this. Like, you need to look into that topic, because basically, the foods you eat, as well as the environment you're in, is going to massively impact this. Secondly, there's that whole angle that, like, the vegan people, at least in the current climate of how they're being marketed to, they're going to be in really bad shape in that regard. I'd even say this as well. You notice how, again, those things that you think you know, but you just heard repeated, notice how none of them turn out to be real. Like, I'll give you one that blew my mind not that long ago, is that one where someone told me, like, you know, actually, like, estrogen isn't just, like, the female hormone that, like, women should have. And I was like, what do you mean? And if you look into it, dude, there's another fucking rabbit hole. You can just go right down. Like, what? Like, because they present it to you like, well, the men need the testosterone and the women need the ether. And it's like, as usual, this whole thing's all nonsense. And the initial way they frame things is how they put your mind in the sort of maze they want you to be in. So I have two questions on the testosterone angle. One, what are your thoughts as a general approach? Because it sounds to me like there's another trick. It's like, in the modern day, look, every man's not just a soy boy fucking screaming at a Marvel trailer, but we're not far off, even most people, quite frankly, compared to what a man used to be. And then the other angle, this is a bit more nuanced, is the one area I find I'm a little bit suspicious about myself in that area, is I know there are a lot of people, because obviously we're also somewhat overlapping with the whole right-wing bodybuilder angle. There are some people who have the old school mentality where they also sort of trust chemicals. And I know a lot of them do just go straight for essentially like the HGH or the TRT type thing. So what is your vibe on that angle? Because my issue with that one is I get worried that drags you back into the pharmaceutical thing and you get sort of caught in a loop where you have to steal that shit forever. So give me some thoughts in this area, because it sounds like essentially just ignoring testosterone's a massive problem for men in general.
Yeah, it is a massive issue, and it kind of goes back to like the men of the society at the end of the day are the ones that are going to be able to protect the walls of the community, go out and hunt, protect from invaders, and really, like, if someone is taking advantage of you, and overthrow the ruler. And if testosterone is low, then the masculine edge, literal strength, muscle mass, bone density, just the attitudes of being okay with someone ruling over you are all much more manageable in a population when there's low testosterone. So you have things like, plastics is a massive one. They're full of endocrine disruptors, which can impact your hormones. That's why men are getting, breast tissue growing. It's why their voices sound like women. It's, beer is a big one as well, endocrine disruptors, and in general, just an unhealthy diet. They're not getting enough animal fats because animal fats contain cholesterol, which is another meme that they have. High cholesterol is bad. No, high cholesterol is good. If you're eating high quality animal fats that contain cholesterol, your body literally changes cholesterol into testosterone in the body. So if you don't have that, then your body can't make as much testosterone. So there's a lot of things that are contributing to it. Poor sleep, alcohol in general, porn and excessive masturbation. And I don't think you should masturbate at all, but even having sex, if you're, depleting yourself, ejaculating all the time, then your testosterone is going to be low because your body responds to your environment. And if you need, quote, need testosterone to perform and succeed, then your body is going to create that for you. Now, if your body thinks that you are procreating and spreading your seed with all these hot women, that's what your brain is responding to if you're watching porn and ejaculating all the time, then there's no real need for your body to produce testosterone and conquer the environment that you're in, because your brain already thinks, wow, I'm getting laid with all these hot women, like I don't need to do anything, I'm good and chilling at this point in time, so there's no need for that. Not to mention semen itself is full of minerals and vitamins like zinc, which are very important for your testosterone levels. So yeah, I guess base kind of things to do if you want to increase your testosterone: get sunlight. That's a massive one. Vitamin D, super critical for testosterone production. Eat raw animal fats like egg yolks, high fat steak. Liver is a massive one. Getting your minerals in balance in general is super important for all hormones. So taking something like Shilajit, that's Shilajit, Shilajit, which is a resin that oozes out of Siberian or Russian mountains. So it's like this super earthy, oozy kind of sticky material which you dissolve in water, but it's basically got all the minerals in it that you need. You can dissolve it in water. I have mine every morning. But it's really about giving your body the building blocks it requires to utilize the natural machinery that it has. So minerals, animal fats, making sure you're sleeping, making sure you're getting sunlight, making sure that your cortisol isn't too high throughout the day. If you're worrying about things, if you're in a high stress environment, if you're never like really relaxing, then think about how a lion operates. Lion is typically seen as like this pinnacle of a masculine animal, if there is such a thing. What is a lion doing? Okay, they are viciously hunting, fighting other lions. They are really using their body to the max in chasing an antelope down and tearing it to pieces. But then what are they doing? They're just chilling and sleeping. So they have a need for testosterone in these intense short bursts of activity, but then they are napping, they're chilling, they're roaming their savanna, they're conquering land. This is another thing. It's like, does your body require testosterone through going to the office and dealing with Susan from HR? It's like, no, that's not an environment which is going to lead you to have high testosterone. However, if you need to go and make sales and compete with other men, or you're doing some kind of sport where you're physically, battling with other men, then yeah, your testosterone is going to raise to kind of accommodate that. If you're out and about, literally hunting like animals, I haven't done this personally, but I can imagine that itself is an activity which kind of activates those latent genes inside you. It's like, oh, there's a need for me to be aware, for me to be strong and quick and, problem solve in a high stress environment. It's like, that's going to increase your testosterone. So building blocks of your diet: low stress in general, sleep, sunlight, minerals, and cultivating a lifestyle and environment that actually makes use of testosterone. And this is why people see testosterone boosters from lifting weights. If you're exercising and doing hours and hours of cardiovascular endurance stuff like cycling or running, for extended periods of time, that's actually going to reduce your testosterone because you're in a high cortisol state a lot of the time. So I don't recommend doing that. Obviously,
wouldn't you say that's sort of most people's go-to exercise? Like, if you think of how even television would show you someone working out, it's always the bloody guy in England in the rain and fucking forcing himself to run. His face is so cold. Like, it's the idea of like, you're just suffering, aren't you? So it sounds like it's not even fucking good exercise.
No, and that's one of those things. Is like, oh, I'm running every day. Like, I don't feel good though, and it's like, so they get discouraged. But actually, you're putting on these running shoes. You're likely running on concrete. Your feet aren't operating how they should, so your hips aren't operating how they should. So you're just getting this weird exercise, which just makes your, muscles and joints hurt. Like, that's going to discourage you. But if you're going into the gym, you're just lifting a little amount that's much, much better than your previously sedentary lifestyle, then your testosterone is going to increase because your body goes, oh shit, we actually need to lift these heavy objects, or we're being exposed to, anabolic activity, then your testosterone is going to kind of accommodate that. Another thing in general is like visualizing it all, believing that you have high testosterone and, having, this goes for any health issue. It's like the first and foremost, it's like the placebo effect. You can literally heal yourself by having the belief that something's going to work out. I believe that I'm a high testosterone male, and it sounds silly, But if you like chant that to yourself in the mirror in the morning, guarantee that's going to have some order of effect. And if you're working from nothing, then you might as well go, right? So you're doing all these other things. You have the belief that everything's going to work out. You have the belief that you can put on muscle. Just as a side note, some people let their limiting beliefs of like their genetics, they look at their dad and they go, right, oh, he's not very muscular. I don't have the genetics to be big. And if you're always living your life with this limiting belief in your head, I'm never going to be big. I don't naturally have the genetics for muscles. Then yeah, guess what? Your body's going to respond accordingly. But if you look into epigenetics, epigenetics is how your genes express as a result of the environment that you're in. The environment that you're in can be your lifestyle choices, how you exercise and all the rest of it, the diet that you're putting in. But it can also relate to the beliefs that you're feeding yourself. And people literally think themselves into chronic illness. Sure. Think about the harm that a doctor can give you by saying, look, this cancer is inoperable. You're going to be dead in 2 years. Imagine the level of fear and poor health that alone will put you in. But if the doctor had come in and say, look, mate, you have this growth, but it's entirely solvable. You're going to be right as rain in 6 months as long as you do these things. Like that is a much better way to treat things in terms of, you always want to choose the beliefs that serve you the best. You always, no matter if your dad is the smallest guy in the world, you must believe that the like almost silly belief that I have the most elite bodybuilding genetics possible, and no matter where you are genetically in terms of your raw DNA, the belief that you have about that is going to serve you well if you go to the max extreme. And this goes for anything. I can make the most money. I can attract the most women. I can have the best time. I'm the happiest person. There is no world where being realistic in any of these goals or settings will be better for you, because the belief is what's going to set your range, if you will. And then everything else that you're doing in your environment and your, habits and how you carry yourself, that is going to kind of follow along with those beliefs. So the testosterone, a lot of it can be fixed, removing blue light exposure. Magnesium is another good one that just kind of supports to de-stress and recover and everything. Having things like raw honey is a massive one as well, because carbohydrates in general, this is where the keto people kind of get it wrong. I think keto is great if you're obese, like genuinely obese, and you need to lose a lot of weight and zero carbohydrates. I'm going to go into ketosis. I'm going to eat animal fats that keep me satiated, and the fat will kind of burn off. But ultimately, for testosterone, carbohydrates are really good for decreasing cortisol, for replacing what your muscles lose when you work out, the glycogen in there. And so things like raw honey and fruit, raw milk are really good, easily digested carbohydrates that kind of just replace what your body utilizes on a day-to-day basis in terms of that energy. And when your body has that constant flow of energy, then it has the ability to repair itself and kind of operate at a higher level, which is going to mean that you have higher testosterone in general. So yeah, it is one of those insidious problems. If everyone had higher testosterone, there'd be a lot more guys willing to just be like, actually, this is bullshit, mate, and stand up to the essentially nerds who are running the show right now in government. There is so few government leaders that looked like a jacked, confident guy. Like, I can't think of a single Western leader that looks like he has high testosterone. I think of Ron DeSantis. He's a little bit overweight, the American Florida governor. But because he's just like, nah, I'm going to do this. This stuff's BS. He's like assertive. Like, that's the most high T guy probably on the scene right now. And he effortlessly wins because of it. Because intuitively, humans have this innate sense of like, yeah, he's aligning to his masculine, his masculine side. It's good, it's right, it's proper, it's intuitively feels good. When you see a feminine woman, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, that's good, that's natural, she's beautiful, whatever. There's this intuitive sense of things that when hormones are operating at a normal level, then that seems to lead to your intuition firing properly as well. So yeah, a bunch of stuff you can do with your testosterone. It's very, very important. And then if you do all of that stuff and you're still like at a level that you don't like, I just don't think that everyone is doing all that stuff and still is low testosterone, to the point that they will need, external injections. And, just to finish off on that point, I think a lot of guys will be in an office job that's garbage, not living healthy, and then they'll be low testosterone, no sex drive, and think, oh, what's happening? I needed these external injections.
But they haven't. Right?
Yeah. And they haven't been living right for years, and then their body's like, okay, I'm not feeling too good. You don't need the external injection. You need to get your body right. And then maybe if you do all of that for years and you're upwards of 50 years old and you still don't feel like you have enough, then I would say, okay, maybe there's a place for it. But, if you're a young guy under 30, absolutely not at any point, unless I respect that some people want to reach that high echelon level of bodybuilding, in which case, like, okay, maybe. But even then, the people that want to do that, they haven't maxed out their natural potential, because they're not doing all these things which are naturally supporting their health. They're having like bang energy drinks and eating garbage protein powder. And then they're like, yeah, I don't feel too good. I need this, hormone injection. I was like, no, you don't. That's what my thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd also say on that particular topic, like, if you notice that if you instantly resist what he's saying, then you think, no, but if they've got like if they just have it as like an injection, I can take it. Then why don't I just do that instead? It's like you're already actually you're almost where you need to be, because what you need to do is get that voice there, and you need to go away and battle with that voice, not tell us it. I always tell people this: don't tell me your shitty excuses. Your shitty excuses were created by your mind to explain why you can't do it. They aren't why I can't do it. I'm doing it. I'm making that things work how I want. They work in the way I want. What I say makes sense to me. But you'll notice a lot of people, their go-to is like, so I could do it this way. It's like that famous thing where people hear, it's true, by the way, it's just, again, it's a very esoteric path. It's true, if you essentially master high, like sort of advanced levels of meditation and yogic practices, you actually can have experiences in your mind that are like really powerful psychedelic drugs. The problem, as you can imagine, is you're not going to do that within 10 minutes. Whereas if you take the LSD, absolutely, it could kick in and have the same effect with no training, right? The problem is a lot of people in the modern day, because they have become these dreaded consumers, they're going to automatically default to what is the like simple shortcut, like chemical thing I can do just now to get the result. It's like always the best way is like figure out why you need to do it and then find the natural way, right? The natural way is always the best way in these regards, no matter what vitamin, hormone, even the way you build your muscles. Then, by the way, it's spoiler, that's why people went back to fucking medicine balls, not just everything's a weight machine nowadays. Like essentially the natural way always seems to be the best. Just seems to have some like inherent logic to it, or like it makes sense, right?
Yeah, and that's, I said it earlier, that's what I always go back to. It's like our bodies are designed, or just if you don't believe in the design of it, they operate at the best level when we are in our natural state amongst nature, eating foods that just grow out of the ground and away from all of the man-made influences that seem to take away our natural power. When we have all that in order, then we can tap into the extra kind of spiritual energy which directs us and enables us to live our highest selves and be in our healthiest versions of ourselves, which ultimately is going to lead to the most success in our lives. So that's been true for me. That's been true for all the people that I kind of give this information to. And if that's what people can take away from this conversation, is to just ditch everything that's man-made, get out in nature barefoot and get some sun, and everything else will kind of be revealed to you, and you have an innate sense of what feels wrong. When you have that base level of being in nature and feeling good, then everything else seems to just feel not as good, and you can kind of go from there as to what your next step is to take back your own health.
When you said that earlier about how, like, you look around the world and the people who are the supposed leaders, like, yeah, they're in no way masculine archetypes. Like, in fact, most of the time, even the type of guy just by default that they're like an old, broken down man, half the time, whose entire life has been being an incumbent politician. Like, they're actually the opposite of anything that would approach like a male archetype that you would follow into war, into battle, to like who you would listen to, who you would take like intuitive advice from. Like, so one thing I would say is this: is one of the ways you know that like the world is incredibly feminized is if you think about school, right? What's the way that women wreck each other? Obviously, they don't fight because that isn't their strength. They destroy each other's character. That's what they do. They spread shitty rumors about each other. They character assassinate. They make divisive elements where it's like, right, you have to be on my side against this person or I eject you. They do purity spirals. Like, the joke is this: the way you know there are no real men in like leadership positions goes like this, because none of them can withstand just being called a name. Like, you notice in society, the most powerful electric fence for men is this: oh, wow, you're not one of those X, are you? Oh, I didn't know you were so-and-soist. What the hell? You believe in that? Dude, people can't handle the idea another person thinks something different. That will make them literally jump in line, stop doing something that was beneficial, stop speaking about something they really believe in. Like, people have got to get past this, because one thing you started out the conversation with, it mentioned the sun in the balls angle. I'd say, by the way, that's just the modern version, because people have actually tried the no jerking off part and they're finding the results. You notice that's what they always do. They always present it as just inherently silly at the base minimum, if not just wrong. Just silly. You're just an idiot if you look in that area. And that alone will put so many people off even going down these paths.
Yeah, it's a logical fallacy of argument. It's just like you attack the character of the thing rather than the arguments of the thing. It's like, oh, you're not like that, are you? And it's like, no, of course not. But in order to kind of, one, succeed in anything, but two, live a lifestyle which is like beneficial for you, you have to be willing, in any case, to stand by your beliefs and be like, yeah, you can call me what you want, but I know at my heart what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I'm willing to be thought of as silly. And the funny thing is like, when you do that and when you take the arrows of, you know, verbal abuse or whatever, then you can you get this admiration and respect from even those same people. And so, you know, he's not backing down. Okay, well, I can respect that. And it kind of plays into how you can't be cancelled. You can only cancel yourself. There are people that people have tried to cancel. I'm sure you're one of them, but you never back down. You never agree with them, and you never, oh, sorry guys, like I stepped out of line. It's like, no, I'm going to say what I want because I believe it and I'll stay true to it. And you never have a negative, you know, situation because of that, unless you give up yourself. It ties into that kind of, you never fail until you actually stop trying mentality. It's like, if you accept the enemy's rules as your own and then like bow down because of it, that's the only way you can lose in those situations. And so it's like, yeah, you can call me what you want. I can call you what I want. And, you know, if so be it. Cool. Like you're this random homeless guy shouting on the street, oh, you're an idiot. It's like, you're not going to pay attention to what they think because they're a crazy person. But because online kind of gives everyone a level playing field in terms of like, it feels very real when someone, yes. I mean, on some levels it feels real, but on some levels it's just pixels on a screen. You can just ignore that as well. It's like, I'm putting out the information that I think is good for me. People can follow me if they think it resonates with them. If not, okay, bugger off. I don't care. Like, I don't need you. I don't need you to like come in. I don't believe what you are saying. You should feel bad for believing. It's like, nope. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, I get that a lot. It's like, I'm not forcing you to read my stuff. I'm not forcing you to live this way. I'm just putting out what I think is good and right. And then if it works for you, good. If it doesn't, cool. But to go into a room, I don't go into other people's rooms and say, you guys are idiots for thinking this or liking this. I just, you know, I let them be and accept what they want to do and make the choices that they're making in their lives. It's like, while I think a lot of people are making silly decisions, I'm not going to abuse them for doing so. I'm just going to do my own thing and like, yeah, not give in to other people's pressures because they are offended by what I'm doing because it highlights something in them that they don't like.
I think one of the best examples of this type of topic as well, where people will just be naturally put off by the initial responses they get, and even things they themselves will think, like I say again, where you think it's your brain responding to a thought, but it's not actually. That's like the little macro they programmed into you, so that when you hear tried not jerking off, you're supposed to immediately think, because this is why the system is genius, guys. You're supposed to think, what was the first thing I ever heard about not jerking off? Oh, wait, it was that NoFap thing. It's where a bunch of nerds just said, like, you get superpowers if you don't jerk off, and obviously you don't get, I haven't tried it, but obviously you wouldn't get superpowers after a week of just not working off. Yeah. And, like, that whole topic, like, that's more like a fucking anthropological exercise in how you confuse humans. It's got nothing to do with the efficacy or not of jerking off. So I would say on that topic, one, I will say this. When I did even look into that back in the day, That is not in any faith sense a good faith movement, the no fap group, by the way. Because if you ever go on those subreddits, what is every topic about? It's about how you can edge, which is like jerking off without coming. It's like, bro, if your entire principle of not jerking off was to jerk off as much as you can without it technically being defined as jerking off, I don't think you were really going into this to stop jerking off, were you? That's like the people, by the way, I'll even tag in, like I say, I do some of the keto stuff, but I'm not in the religion, mate. If you go onto the keto subreddits, what is every post about? Check out this fucking fake pizza I made out of cauliflower. It's almost as good as pizza. Guys, the whole premise of this was we're not eating pizza anymore. Like, there's something off here. Like, we're almost trying to cheat the system. So the reason why I bring that topic up, dude, is because I feel like most people can't even get past the silliness and the things they've heard about, even on internet culture from the 4chans of the world. They can't even sort of access it as a topic, because there's one where I'm not exaggerating. All we're telling someone, in theory, remember, is just try not touching your dick for a week. And one, they can't do it, dude. They can't. And two, the excuses they will make to not do it are mental. And the reason why I bring this up is this. I'm telling you, if you think it doesn't work, do a week. Just do that 1 week. And you tell me after that 1 week if you have no difference. Because I personally think, by the way, that's actually one of those like fundamental building blocks that actually, for real, I would recommend to anyone. I think it's one of the best I've tried. Like, when I can actually do that consistently, mate, I genuinely start to like, I'm not joking, that is like the fucking, it's like taking the red pill and coming out of the Matrix. You suddenly start seeing all the sex programming everywhere. You see how everyone has become a degenerate. Guess what? Yes. When you walk into a coffee shop, look, obviously as a man, your eyes might scan a woman, but the idea you like obsessively look at her ass or think about the way she, like that, we're all degenerates if we don't sort of come out of that shit. I find it is, I think it's an incredibly valuable area. I know it sounds silly, but I think it's actually one of the most important.
100%. And it's almost like it happened so long ago for me. I remember, on 4chan and stuff, this no-fat movement or whatever, they have, at principle, it's a good message. There are people which will take it as their new religion and like, shame others or find ways to get around it. Or technically, I'm not fapping still because I'm not ejaculating. It's like, okay, no. But what's the principle of it? Hey, guys, you should stop fapping. It's probably bad for you. Yeah, 100%. And the final point of that is to like, semen retention. Even if you're having sex with your girlfriend, then like, okay, intentionally not ejaculate and kind of do these extra practices which enable you to orgasm without ejaculation. But that's the kind of the end level, if you will. Most guys, myself included back in the day, were watching porn too often and masturbating and kind of blunting their masculine edge in a lot of ways. And when you're a young college guy, your libido can be something that you want to tame and it's distracting or whatever, but that's because the libido and the masculine sexual energy is not being channeled into something because of the incessant propaganda and TVs and movies and porn itself. It's like everything is sexual, everything is sexualized, and you must get rid of your libido whenever it rears its head, rather than being like, wow, I feel quite energized and aroused, if you will, but let's channel that aroused energy into a workout or painting or something, or even writing. It's like sexual energy is creative energy. The ultimate creation is creating a new life. And, some ancient texts even say it's a sin to waste that through ejaculation, even, ejaculating without the need. This is the whole concept of like, sex should only be for procreation. I think what that really means is not like the super religious interpretation of just like never have sex because sex is bad. What it actually means is kind of a higher esoteric meaning of like, don't waste that life force that gives you all of your creative energy as a man, unless it is to actually give life and sire a child. And that's like obviously the extreme version. I'm sort of a balance. Like sometimes I'll do it only with a partner. I haven't masturbated in years or whatever. But there's definitely some intentional thing where it's like, once a month, if that. And what I find is like that has enabled me to be at a higher centered level of focused output, aggression in a positive way, results in recovery in the gym. And also, I always put it this way. It's like, okay, you think jerking off's not that bad. Let's just analyze what you're actually doing. It's normalized, but it's not normal, right? But let's zoom out. Next time you find yourself browsing on your phone or laptop at night, you zoom out to a third person perspective. Say there's a camera on the wall looking at you. What are you doing? You're hunched over, touching yourself like a chimpanzee with this blue light illuminating you. You're sweaty, like it's this really gross image. And you essentially have some tendrils of demonic energy kind of dragging you down into that world of porn and of, that self-pleasure, that dopamine high, which lasts 15 seconds. And then you feel regret for what you've done because your body intuitively knows, that was probably like pretty shitty. Like you feel horny, you get that release, and then it's like, oh God, what did I do? And that can be, very crippling for a lot of people. So if at your base level, you just say, okay, I'm not going to watch porn and I'm not going to touch my dick anymore. That has follow-on effects for so many guys to the point where if you make that rule for yourself and you really say, okay, I'm not going to do it, then naturally you're going to get higher testosterone, which can increase your willpower to actually do something with your life. And it gets rid of that kind of, it gets rid of the feeling of just being like drained and happy. And it's like this ultimate distraction, which takes you away from your masculine dominating edge, which is going to lead to any progress in your life. So even if it seems, oh, you're not a no-fapper, are you? That's another one of those things.
Yeah.
Oh, like, you're not anti-porn. It's like, yes, I am. It's horrible. It's a bad influence. I'm not a no-fapper. I'm not a religious zealot, but I'm just the kind of guy that doesn't masturbate. And that's a very righteous and good thing to do and cultivate for yourself. And because porn is so prevalent, a lot of us have been exposed to it from as, single-digit ages horribly because we have access to an iPad or iPhone or whatever, or computer, which I think is by design as well. It's a perversion of your innate sexual creative energy that ends up distracting you from your true potential. And what you'll find is the longer you can kind of go without it, you'll realize, the base level lust that I was satisfying through even temporary relationships with girls and like one night stands or whatever, and maybe pursuing people that ultimately weren't that good for you in the long term in a relationship, but they satisfied the temporary physical lust that has been programmed into you from watching porn at a young age. That's not what sex is about, ideally, at its most beautiful, at its most creative, and at its, where it serves you the highest level. So the nofap, people are always going to run with a movement and make it kind of weird, but it's a good message. And if anyone out there is still, masturbating on the regular, a lot of guys, I get messages from, my dick isn't working. I'm with a beautiful girl, with my girlfriend, and I'm not getting hard. It's like 110%, 100 out of 100 times they are watching porn and masturbating. And it's like, oh, I did it the night before because I didn't want to bust too quickly or whatever with the girl. And it's like, okay, I got the intention, but then it doesn't work at all. Like, what does that serve for you?
Sure.
So it's this real insidious problem. I like talking about it online, and even if it is embarrassing to talk about, it's literally like probably on par with pharmaceutical abuse, with how pervasive it is in our society and how many dudes it does affect. And ultimately, again, porn is put there to keep people in the lower order energies in those base chakras, because if you're always thinking about lust and carnal pleasures, that's the first and second chakra kind of situation. You can never ascend to those higher levels, and you can never tap into those spiritual energies, which are going to really help you manifest and create your own life. And that's also going back to frequencies. Sorry, someone nearby doing something. Tapping into lower frequencies and the music that they put out, the 808 drum kits, they literally, Kanye West speaks about this, they are programmed at a certain frequency, and if you listen to that frequency over and over, it's like boom, 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 that repetitive motion that aligns your brain to the same level. It's going to keep you kind of thinking those low level thoughts. And then the lyrics of those kinds of songs are usually like, shake your ass, I'm making money, hoes in the club, that kind of stuff. That's all, again, by design to keep you resonating these lower levels, the carnal physical pleasures, which ultimately don't serve you in the long run. And stopping masturbating, stopping watching porn is kind of the first step to that. And then again, you make these little changes, your diet gets better, you improve in general, and your spiritual capacity, your physical capacity all expands, and you realize all these other things which are going wrong in your life.
Sure. I mean, I'll even say that's, by the way, from just doing retweets of this type of material, that is probably the go-to one that the shitters who are like obsessed with like tone policing my Twitter always go to, dude. It's always the NoFap one. Because essentially, like, and by the way, they're all, as you'd imagine, they're literally the soy face guy going like, "I just had a bloody amazing Beyond Burger." Like, it's exactly that guy who, by the way, should be the guy who's against that. Because the joke is everything that we're talking about is antithetical to the way they live their life. What I would say is this as well is because actually that's how I got into this whole topic. Like, essentially, for my job, I wouldn't say that I want to be more productive in the sense that it's a bit like fucking you are sort of buying into the idea that everything's produced and consumed and stuff. But doing more stuff. I wanted to be someone who creatively expressed myself more. And as I found, unsurprisingly, like I've tried doing the grind, I've tried making yourself do videos, do X videos per day, do this much. Right, basically, as far as I can find, rather than just making yourself like a slave driver work, it's better if you sort of figure out how much energy do you have each day and then you shape it. You figure out, right, at this time of day, I can get this done and I've got to get this done before 4 p.m. 6. That's when I taper off a bit after I have my last meal or whatever. If you do that approach, naturally you're going to try and improve the system. You're going to try and do the food inputs, do the vitamin inputs, take behaviors like this into equation. And what I found was the amount of actual energy you have access to is enormous when you start addressing these angles. Like the joke is, it's like I said about the gym example. The person who doesn't go is going to think of going to the gym and go, you'd be exhausted after that. No, you moron. You go to the gym for a couple of weeks, like 3 days a week. You're going to have loads of energy. You're going to have mental stamina. Like it's actually going to be easy for you to do 10 pull-ups where before you would struggle on 3. Like that's just how it works. You build it up like anything. So one thing I want to touch on here is another thing I totally vibe with is what you're sort of outlining here about. Initially, you might think, I just want to be healthy. I just want to be fit. In this particular case, by the way, where a lot of us got into this field is I want to get girls, right? This is before all the NoFap shit. I want to get hot girls, so I want to look good and I want to talk to them. And one thing that I noticed comes with that is I've noticed on your timeline now as well, you don't do what is a classic actually marketing technique in this sphere, which is you not only post the pictures of your physique and the things you're eating, you post the girl with the hot ass, right? You post the girl with the great cleavage and smoking an Italian cigarette on a fucking beach somewhere. Like we all know exactly the fucking type of aesthetic that people post on these accounts, right, as a way to get engagement. But the problem with that is, and this ties into the NoFap angle, is I feel like once you go down that route where you start actually trying to do it less, one thing you immediately realise is I've got to remove some of the inputs of info that made me want to do it. So one thing I did, for example, in my space in esports, there's loads of women in esports who figured out just through the way the algorithm affects your brain, the more you sort of flex your sexuality, the more engagement you will get on your Instagram account. And I'm sorry to say, dude, a lot of women that like just went from being normal women who just had clothes on and were having a coffee and having a meal and then occasionally posted a bikini picture, mate, if you saw how many of them now are like one step away from OnlyFans content, but just on their social media. And what I realized was when I actually unfollowed all these people, basically the only ones I kept, the ones who were like personal friends of mine, where it's more like on some level I'm going to keep in contact with this person. So let's say I removed, let's say I had 1,000 accounts I was following. That's an exaggeration, obviously, but we'll just use it as a random number. If I had 1,000 women I was following who were posting pictures like this, now I follow, say, 3. Dude, just not having the inputs, you see how it changes your mind, and you see how it changes how you think of a woman or what beauty is. And like essentially, this is why I get why people on some intuitive level instantly reconnect with like antiquity and like ancient Greek and Roman thinking. Because, mate, I start to vibe with all those ideas that like the good, the true, and the beautiful are all aspects of the same thing. And that, you know what, actually beauty isn't subjective. Like the kind of disgusting, degenerate shite that they tell us now is sex or is beauty or is wonderful. Like it isn't. It's actually on some like intuitive level, I'm repulsed by it once they don't have those tendrils in me, as it were.
Yeah, so you kind of realize how, again, like you said, degenerate it was, and you just have this moment of clarity, and you need to get rid of all those kind of arousal things that are firing those dopamine receptors, which kind of feel good in the moment, but are ultimately like porn in a way. And one of my friends has this good point about it, is that on some level, even the aesthetic posts of like a beautiful house that is like everything you would want your house to be, and like retweeting that is porn in a way, because it is almost satisfying something in your brain and making your brain feel like you have achieved that because you are liking and retweeting, and now that image is in your brain, and it's like the reward system of seeing this beautiful house should only be reserved for when you yourself have achieved that house. And I get that there's some element of you want to fill your brain with the images and mind kind of visualizations, because that will call that kind of situation into your life at a higher level. So I like doing mood boards for that kind of thing. But if you overuse it, and if you're looking at all these pictures of beautiful women, like that dopamine response should only be for when you approach a beautiful woman in real life. And one of the benefits of quitting porn in general will be that when you see a beautiful lady walking by, it's like this. It's just this, where before you might have think, oh wow, she's hot, I'd like to have sex with her. Now it's like, wow, what a divine expression of beauty. So that is just arousing something in my soul rather than just my dick, for example.
Sure.
And, the porn, it can exist in many forms when it is giving you the reward, the visual reward, or, in some form, retweeting cold showers. A great every morning tweet is porn in a way, because you're getting like, yeah, I'm being a supporter of that message, but I actually haven't done a cold shower at all. It's yes. Getting that release and that dopamine hit from having done something when you actually haven't done anything at all. And that is the issue that a lot of people are facing, is that they're stuck in a fake world of like, it's this spectator culture. They watch this really cool TV show with cool characters doing cool things, and then that experience is cool because their life is so shit, but they can escape their life and the quality of their life by spectating and what's the word? Yeah, it's like this spectating.
Sort of vicariously living through it.
Exactly, and that is actually stealing your full potential away because you're not, putting in the work and the effort and working towards what is ultimately the best dopamine release and the best satisfaction and success of making it on your own and doing the thing, so that when you're not just looking at pictures of bodybuilders, you're gymming for months and then you see a new bicep vein and you're like, boom, yes, that is the real successful feeling that you should aim towards and strive. And ultimately, a lot of these things with like social media, dopamine responses, yeah, you're getting some engagement, but is it for the right reasons? Are you influencing for the right reasons? Is that going to build the reward pathways in my brain which are going to lead to my success? And so on and so forth. So it's about curating your environment online. In real life, again, you're not going to have a healthy mind if your mind's environment, what you exist in and interact with online and in real life, is kind of this lower level porn, cool pictures which are just like serving no real purpose, just as your physical body won't be healthy if your physical environment is not too good.